Have you ever met someone who made you feel uneasy, but you couldn't put your finger on why? Their smile was perfect, their words were kind, their intentions seemed noble, yet something deep in your gut whispered danger? That instinct you felt wasn't paranoia. It was your subconscious mind detecting what Machiavelli called the greatest threat to human survival, the mask. Imagine walking through a crowded room where everyone's face is a carefully crafted performance. The charming networker who remembers your name but forgets your worth the moment you can't benefit them. The humble colleague who speaks softly but sabotages loudly. The loyal friend who collects your secrets like weapons. Every smile, every gesture, every word designed not to reveal who they are, but to manipulate how you see them. This is the world Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago, and it's the world you navigate every single day. The question isn't whether people wear masks. The question is whether you can see through them before they destroy you. Because in a world flooded with influencers, smooth talkers, virtue signalers, and professional charmers, trusting your instincts alone will get you eaten alive. You need something sharper, something surgical. You need Machiavellian X-ray vision. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't just study politics. He dissected human nature like a surgeon studies anatomy. But unlike a surgeon working on a still body, Machiavelli observed people under pressure, under stress, under the weight of their own ambitions. He understood that only when the stakes are real does the mask crack and the truth bleed through. He didn't read people through their Sunday best behavior. He exposed them through their Monday morning desperation. This wasn't cruelty. This was survival. Because Machiavelli lived in a world where trusting the wrong smile could cost you your life, your fortune, or your freedom. Sound familiar? The methods may have evolved, but the game remains the same. The colleague who steals your ideas, the partner who drains your resources, the friend who spreads your vulnerabilities. They all wear masks, and those masks are getting more sophisticated every day. But here is what most people miss about Machiavelli's genius. He never tried to change human nature. He accepted it, studied it, and turned it into a weapon of insight. While others got angry at deception, he got curious about the deceiver. While others fought against manipulation, he learned to read the manipulator's playbook before they even opened it. And now you can too. The first law of Machiavellian psychology cuts through every social pretense like a blade through silk. Watch how they treat the powerless. This isn't about kindness as a virtue. This is about unmasking someone's core programming when they think no one important is watching. Everyone knows how to perform grace around their boss. Everyone can fake respect when there's a benefit waiting. But the real test, the one that never lies, is how someone behaves around people who can offer nothing in return. Pay attention to how they speak to the waiter who's struggling with their order. Notice their tone with the assistant who makes a mistake. Watch their face when they think they're dealing with someone beneath their status. If someone is kind only when kindness pays dividends, they're not kind. They're calculating. And when their power grows, that calculation transforms into exploitation with surgical precision. I once watched a CEO candidate interview for a position. During the formal interview, he was charming, thoughtful, respectful. But I happened to be in the lobby when he was leaving. The security guard politely asked him to sign out, and for just a moment, his mask slipped. The warmth vanished. His voice turned cold. His expression shifted to barely concealed irritation. That 3-second interaction told me more about his character than 3 hours of polished answers ever could. 6 months later, when that man got the job, the first thing he did was fire the security staff to cut costs. A mask had revealed the truth long before the consequences arrived. This is how you catch the flash of the face beneath the performance. When their charm disappears after the cameras turn off. When their voice changes once the deal is closed. When their smile fades the moment no one profitable is watching. These aren't accidents. They're glimpses of authentic intention, and Machiavelli taught us to collect these glimpses like evidence. But observation alone isn't enough. Sometimes you need to create the conditions that force the mask to malfunction. This brings us to the second law. Trigger their ego, then observe the psychological wreckage. Every mask protects something fragile beneath it, and that fragility is always connected to ego. The mask looks calm, composed, confident, until you gently challenge the identity it's designed to protect. That's when people lose their carefully maintained composure. That's when their real face lunges forward like a cornered animal. Machiavelli never confronted someone directly. Direct confrontation puts people on guard, makes them conscious of their performance. Instead, he applied pressure so subtle that his targets didn't even realize they were being tested. He might question someone's expertise softly, almost casually. He might overlook their contribution in a group setting. He might praise their rival just enough to make their eye twitch. Then he would sit back and observe the psychological fallout. Because if someone's ego is fragile, they will defend it with the desperation of someone fighting for their life. They'll interrupt conversations to insert their superiority. They'll overshare accomplishments that weren't asked about. They'll try to one-up every story, every achievement, every moment of attention. Or worse, they'll pretend not to care while their entire demeanor shifts from confident to defensive in seconds. This is how you shatter the performance without throwing a single punch. You don't attack the person. You touch the thing they built their identity around, then step back and watch the mask crack under pressure. A man who bases his worth on intelligence can't handle being intellectually overlooked. The woman who prides herself on moral superiority crumbles when someone questions her ethics. The leader who thrives on respect becomes unhinged when ignored. Find the foundation their mask is built on, and apply just enough pressure to reveal the instability beneath. But here is where most people make a critical mistake. They talk too much during these moments of revelation. They fill the silence with their own noise, missing the confession that's trying to emerge. This leads us to the third law. Listen more than you speak, because silence forces exposure in ways that questions never could. Most people wear masks because they assume you're not really paying attention. They think you're just waiting for your turn to speak, planning your next comment, rehearsing your next story. But if you want to see their truth, reverse this expectation. Say less, much less. Because silence creates psychological pressure that most people can't tolerate. Silence is a void, and humans are psychologically wired to fill voids. They become uncomfortable with the empty space and start filling it with words they didn't plan to say, thoughts they didn't mean to reveal, confessions they intended to keep buried. Let them talk. Let them explain. Let them over-explain. In their rush to impress, justify, or gain your favor, they'll reveal contradictions that expose their true nature. Machiavelli mastered the art of strategic silence. He would often let others speak first, speak longest, and speak until they exhausted their prepared material and started improvising from their authentic selves. In their desperation to fill the quiet, they would reveal that their stated values didn't match their actual behavior. Their language would betray hidden resentments, suppressed ambitions, or carefully concealed prejudices. Every unnecessary word they throw at you while you remain quiet is like pulling a thread from a sweater. Keep pulling, and the entire carefully constructed image unravels in front of your eyes. So the next time someone is trying to sell you their personality, ask one short, probing question. Then say nothing. Watch what spills out of them. The truth always hides in overcompensation, and your silence becomes the scalpel that cuts through to find it. The fourth law requires even more subtlety. Stress tests their morality indirectly, never directly. If you ask someone straight out whether they would ever betray a friend, they'll give you the socially acceptable answer every time. Of course not. Everyone has morals when asked directly in a comfortable setting. But Machiavellian insight doesn't come from direct questions. It comes from observing reactions to carefully crafted scenarios. You want to know if someone would betray a friend for personal gain? Don't ask them. Instead, casually mention how sometimes friendship can complicate business decisions. Then watch their reaction with microscopic attention. Do they become uncomfortable? Do they agree too quickly, as if they've thought about this before? Do they stay silent while their expression changes? Do they immediately launch into a story about someone else who faced this dilemma? You want to discover if someone would lie under pressure? Don't interrogate them about their honesty. Tell them a story about a time when you had to bend the truth to avoid consequences. Watch how they respond. Do they judge you harshly, suggesting they've never faced real temptation? Do they relate immediately, perhaps too enthusiastically? Do they try to one-up your story with their own more dramatic example? Machiavelli understood that values aren't revealed through statements. They're revealed through temptations. He would never ask a man if he was loyal. Instead, he would create a situation where loyalty became expensive, and observe which direction the person leaned when faced with the cost. He would tell a calculated lie, admit to a strategic betrayal, or present a moral dilemma disguised as casual conversation. Then watch how his target's true nature responded to the psychological stimulus. This is how you trigger the mask to malfunction without the person realizing they're being tested. Because authentic values emerge not in comfortable conversations about hypothetical situations, but in real-time reactions to moral pressure. And those reactions, captured in the split second before someone can engage their social filter, reveal more truth than 1,000 prepared answers. The final law of seeing through masks requires the most patience, but delivers the most devastating insight. Compare their words with their patterns, not their moments. Anyone can fake consistency for a day. Anyone can say the right thing in one conversation. Anyone can perform their ideal self when the spotlight is on and the stakes are clear. But no mask, no matter how carefully crafted, survives long-term pattern recognition. This is where Machiavelli's ultimate technique emerges. You stop judging people based on what they tell you today, this week, or even this month. Instead, you start tracking their long-term behavioral trail like a detective following evidence. You watch what they do when they think no one is keeping score. You notice what they choose when the choice isn't obviously consequential. You pay attention to how they behave when the same situation arises multiple times across different contexts. They say they despise gossip, but somehow they know intimate details about everyone in their circle. They claim to value loyalty, but every group they've left behind describes them as the one who couldn't be trusted. They insist they're disciplined and focused, but their results consistently show otherwise. They present themselves as humble and selfless, but their actions reveal an ego that demands constant feeding. When someone's words and actions don't align repeatedly, across multiple situations and extended time periods, you're not witnessing contradiction or human inconsistency. You're observing a mask. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The performance becomes transparent, the manipulation becomes obvious, and their predictability becomes your advantage. Most people are too lazy or too distracted to notice these patterns. They remember individual conversations, but forget behavioral trends. They focus on what someone said last week, but ignore what they've done for the past 6 months. But the Machiavellian mind watches history unfold because patterns don't lie, even when people do. And once you've identified the inconsistency between someone's projected image and their actual pattern, you stop being vulnerable to their performance. You see the truth behind the theater, and that vision changes everything. But seeing someone's mask is only the beginning. The real power lies not in exposing what you've discovered, but in using that knowledge while keeping your insights completely invisible. Machiavelli didn't walk around tearing masks off faces like some righteous crusader. That approach is noisy, creates enemies, and triggers the very fear that makes people dangerous. Instead, he perfected something far more sophisticated. He let people keep their masks while using those masks to control their behavior, shape their decisions, and turn them into unconscious instruments of his own strategy. This is the advanced level of psychological warfare. You don't just see through the performance. You become the invisible director of it. You whisper into the mask without the person ever knowing you're there. And the first rule of this deeper game is perhaps the most counterintuitive. Never let them know what you know. The moment someone realizes you've seen their real face beneath the carefully constructed facade, you lose your advantage completely. They will either shut down entirely, building walls so high you'll never see their authentic self again, or they'll construct a newer, stronger mask, one specifically designed to fool someone as perceptive as you've proven to be. Both outcomes make them exponentially harder to read and impossible to control, which is why Machiavelli never made his insights obvious, never gloated about his psychological victories, never revealed his hand even when he held all the cards. He understood that the greatest power comes from being underestimated, so he let his enemies believe they were successfully fooling him. He allowed his allies to think their subtle manipulation was working. He watched the entire theater of human deception play out around him, while he quietly rewrote the script from behind the curtain. Let them believe they're successfully hiding their insecurity. Let them think you see their performed kindness, not their underlying ambition. Let them assume their words are convincing you. Their charm is working. Their mask is impenetrable. Because as long as they believe the performance is successful, they never change it. They never adapt. They never evolve. And that psychological stagnation becomes your greatest weapon. When someone thinks they have you fooled, they become predictable. They repeat the same patterns, use the same strategies, fall into the same behavioral loops. They become easy to anticipate, simple to manipulate, and completely controllable. That's when you truly own the game. Once you've decoded someone's authentic identity beneath their social performance, you gain something more valuable than mere insight: predictive power. Most people react to behavior in real time, responding to what others do after it's already happened. But you're now operating on a completely different level. You're reacting to intention, to motive, to the psychological programming that drives behavior before it even manifests. This allows you to stay 2, 3, even 4 moves ahead in any human interaction. If you know someone needs constant validation to function, you know they'll self-destruct when ignored strategically. If you understand that someone harbors deep resentment toward authority, you can predict they'll eventually sabotage whoever is leading them. If you recognize that someone uses niceness as a shield to avoid confrontation, you know they'll fold under real pressure every single time. Machiavelli used this kind of psychological insight to predict betrayals months before they occurred, not by watching actions, but by understanding the motives that would eventually drive those actions. This level of foresight transforms every interaction. You don't just hear what they're saying. You hear what they want to say, but can't. You don't just see what they're doing. You see what they'll do next. You don't just understand their current position. You can map out their next 5 moves based on the psychological needs their mask is designed to protect. And that kind of predictive control is the closest thing to mind reading that actually exists. But the truly sophisticated approach goes even deeper. Instead of fighting against their mask or trying to destroy it, you learn to feed it just enough to keep them psychologically dependent on the performance. When someone believes their mask is working perfectly, they stay locked in character. And when someone stays rigidly in character, they become incredibly easy to manage, direct, and control. This is the ultimate paradox of psychological manipulation. You maintain control not by challenging their illusion, but by supporting it strategically. Compliment the humble person on their modesty while watching how they compete in secret. Praise the peacemaker on their ability to stay neutral while observing how they twist that neutrality to gain influence over all sides. Tell the self-proclaimed authentic person how refreshing their honesty is, while they use that reputation to justify their most manipulative behaviors. Machiavelli understood that feeding someone's illusion about themselves keeps them docile and predictable, because they become too busy maintaining their performance to realize they're being used. And while they feel completely in control of their image, their reputation, their relationships, you're actually in control of them. They dance to music only you can hear. The next level involves creating scenarios that force their authentic self to act, confirming what you suspect lies beneath their mask. This isn't confrontation. This is psychological engineering. You design situations that naturally expose their true nature without them realizing they're being tested. Let's say you've identified someone whose mask is built around loyalty, but you suspect they're only loyal when it's convenient or profitable. You don't accuse them of disloyalty. Instead, you engineer a situation where loyalty becomes costly, even if the cost is small. You withhold attention when they expect it. You present them with a choice between helping you and protecting their own interests. You offer them a benefit that requires compromising a principle they claim to stand for. Then you step back and observe with clinical detachment. You don't argue, don't expose, don't call them out. You just watch. And when they act according to their authentic nature rather than their performed values, you don't need to say anything. You just file away the evidence for future use. Machiavelli perfected this technique of giving people enough rope to hang themselves with. He would create opportunities for his rivals to reveal their true character, not through interrogation or confrontation, but by simply giving them the freedom to act according to their deepest impulses. And when they inevitably